I'm Amr.
And I'm Mohamed. Okay, I'll give you a very quick brief about me and Amr. We've been working together for like 6 years. We've been actually doing everything together. We've been teaching all of our classes together, and probably most of our presentations and sessions we've been conducting them together as well. We both began in IBM, and then we joined a non-profit organization in the government in Egypt for a wide-scale agile adoption program. During this program, we had the opportunity to work with a lot of companies. We worked with over 50 companies, and we trained like more than 1,000 professionals, and it was a great actually period that we have collected a lot of experiences, a lot of cases of both failure and success. Okay, and now this session we're going to share with you some practical advice on how actually to fail using Agile. We're going to discuss with you some of the cases that we have seen and we have witnessed ourselves, and the cases that we saw that these are the true causes of failure when adopting Agile. Okay?
Great. First of all, the first question that we have to ask ourselves, are we really failing with Agile? Let's consult the experts. This is a report that is done over several thousands of projects all around the world. It says that in waterfall projects, the failed projects are around 30%, while in Agile projects, the failed is only 9%. What do you think? Is this a good advancement? Really? Yeah, of course. Agile managed to reduce the amount of failing projects by about 20%, but what about the challenge projects? Half of the projects practicing Agile have been challenged. The definition of challenge in this report says that it has been delivered over time or over budget, which is something very bad. And in some cases, it is defined to be a failing project as well. So this report says that Agile has done something good to the community, but it's not doing well. Making things worse, this report, the next year, they have announced another report at which they have zoomed on the small projects only. Guess what? It's more or less the same.
So why are we going with Agile?
This is the case because many projects in the Agile arena are failing. It's not making any advancement. So we are not doing good with Agile. We are failing. And there are many reasons. This is why we are talking about this topic right now.
Okay. Okay, so before we start discussing with you the failure cases, we need to all agree on a definition to the word Agile first. Okay, so what is Agile basically? Agile is a mindset. Agile is not a process. Agile is not a framework. It's not a set of practices. It's not a methodology. It's not a life cycle. Agile is a mindset. It's an established set of attitudes towards something. It's a culture. It's a philosophy. It's a way of thinking. So it's not a specific practice. So this mindset is established through 4 core values. These are the values from the manifesto that Pierre talked about in the opening session. Okay? These values talk about interactions, collaboration, individuals responding to change. These are the values that we believe in. These are the values that the Agile mindset is established upon. With those 4 values are grounded by 12 principles. Okay, they are supported by 12 principles. And it's manifested and implemented through many practices actually. So there is no one-size-fits-all Agile process. You can adopt Agile in too many different ways. There are a lot of practices and you have a lot of options. The practices are not the important part. The values and the principles, how you think, what are your core values? Are you always targeting to achieve those values and principles by whatever practices that you have, or you're focusing just on the practice side? Okay, so to wrap up, Agile is a mindset. It's a way of thinking. This mindset is established through 4 core values, grounded by 12 principles, and can be implemented through many different practices. From these set of practices or methods, we know Scrum, we know extreme programming, and there are a lot of other different methodologies. All of these are different flavors of Agile. We cannot claim that this is the solution to all of our problems or this. You can even have your own Agile process, which would be a mix of 2 different or 3 or 4 different methods. Okay? What's the difference between doing Agile and being Agile? Doing Agile is just focusing on the practice side. It's just thinking, okay, let's do Scrum. Let's do stand-up meetings. Let's do retrospectives. Let's do sprints. Okay? This is the part where you do Agile. However, being Agile is related to the mindset. How do you think about Agile? How do you achieve the values of Agile? How do you communicate? How do you collaborate together? Okay? This is a typical sprint. This is a typical Scrum sprint, actually. During the first day, you'd have the Scrum planning meeting, which is a core practice of Scrum. And in each day, you would have the daily stand-up meeting, which is a core practice. And in the other day, the last day, you would have the retrospective and the iteration review. This part, actually, is the part where you are doing Agile. This is the part where you are practicing Scrum. This is the part where you are doing the practices prescribed in Scrum. And this is the part where you should be Agile. This is the part where you should hold to the values and the mindset. This is how you should react. This is how you should communicate on daily basis. This is what you should do, and this is the core values that you are actually trying to achieve during the whole iteration. Okay?
Just to give one example about that, if we are thinking about collaborating with the customer, if we are doing this way of doing software, if we are doing Scrum, and we have a problem with collaborating with the customer, this problem should be resolved somewhere here. While we are being Agile, we are responding to this problem of not being able to collaborate with the customer, even if we are implementing Scrum. Okay, you see the difference now.
So you're saying you can't be Agile when you're doing Agile?
It may be, you may not be Agile when you are doing Agile. This is exactly.
Takes much of your time. Exactly. You can do Agile. A team can call himself a Scrum team if he does the core practices prescribed by Scrum. But that's not just it. Okay? We cannot be just Agile just by adopting a group of practices. Scrum ones or XP or any other methods. Agile is a lot more than this. It's about, again, it's about the mindset, how we think, how we react, and how we do everything during our software development project. It's not just about doing the practices prescribed in a specific method like Scrum. Okay?
Okay, something which is very related to this is the Shuhari stages of learning that you have heard about in the opening session. The Shu level is that you are following some rule. Take Scrum and try it as is with all the ceremony, with all the artifacts, everything, and try it for a while, for 2 or 3 sprints, and see what's the value, see what's the result, okay? Now, after a while, you break the rule, you start doing things differently, you import some other practices from other methods, and try things mixing Scrum with others, maybe. The third level is the re-level in which you become the rule yourself. You start inventing new practices in which you find it more suitable to your case. Okay.
We always say that true agility is in the re-level. It's not on the Shu and it's not on the Ha level. Okay? True agility is here. This is where you have no limits, no boundaries. Scrum is not everything, okay? You can be Agile, but by a lot of other different practices, for example, okay? So, but in order to reach the re-level, you have to go through
The shoe and her level.
The shoe and her level. You can just jump to the re-level right away.
Okay, and this gets us to the first failure scenario that we have witnessed. It's getting stuck at the shoe level, at which people implements one methodology, XP, feature-driven development, Scrum, whatever, and they find value in this methodology, and they get stuck in this level. Because as Mohamed said, no one size fits all in Agile, so you'll have to change things. You'll have to tweak things around. You have to introduce some more practices, not methods. So this is the first thing that we have witnessed, is that people get stuck at the shoe level, and even more, they write it down and nail it down as a process in the company, so nobody can do anything different than this set of practices.
Another way of this failure pattern is rushing towards the re-level right away, or jumping towards the re-level right away. Like customizing Scrum, for example, before implementing it for the first time, before implementing it by the book. Or, for example, dropping off a specific practice and saying that we don't need this before experimenting with this practice, or before even trying it out. So you can just jump right away to the re-level. You should start with the shoe level process. Not necessarily Scrum, but any of the known Agile processes or methods. You should have something to start with, and then you should start transitioning to the other stages. Okay?
The second one is focus on the practice, not the value. Because one of the critical success factors in Agile adoption and in any process improvement initiative is that the team should see some kind of value in the way they are working while implementing some kind of a practice. So it doesn't make sense that we implement something like the stand-up meeting, and when I ask the team, what's the value of it? They tell me, we don't know, we just gather every day, and this is how we are told Scrum should be. So this is a critical success factor. You have to concentrate on the value. The team should see the value, should feel it. So when you ask the team, they tell you, oh yeah, stand-up meeting is great. We share knowledge, and we discover impediments and manage to remove these impediments very early.
Okay. The third failure case is about not educating the organization or the customers. Okay? And this is a very important one. Education is extremely important in any successful Agile initiative. You have to educate actually everyone, not just the team. Agility is not about a small software development team just doing software or just developing a software. It's about the whole system, the organization, the management, the way they manage, the way they report, the way progress is reported, the way people are managed, the way people are appraised and compensated, actually, the way projects are planned, everything. And it's about the customer being educated as well. We have seen a lot of projects fail because the customer wasn't educated. The customer didn't know about Agile. He just didn't like the idea of becoming involved frequently with the team. He said, no, just I want to see everything when everything is ready in the final phase of the project. I don't have time for this. They didn't see the value. Okay? Customers should be educated. Successful Agile adoptions, they require a shift in the culture and a shift of the way people think, not just a mechanical transition to better practices. It's not, again, it's not about the practice part. They should be educated to think differently. Customers should be educated so that they can perceive the value of agility. They should know why we should be agile. They should know the value of more collaboration. They should perceive the value of frequent feedback. Okay? So it's all about educating the customer, the organization, the management. The management won't support a mechanical Agile adoption plan. We have seen a lot of management treat the Agile as a transition to a different process, and that's it. Okay, our teams in the organization started doing something called Agile, and it's famous these days, so okay, let them try and that's it. No, this is not enough. Okay, managers should be educated. We should shift their mindset and their way of thinking as well to be more agile. Okay?
Another question?
Yes, I have a question about this step. In delegation, would you rather start by educating the values or the practice? I mean, usually, is it better maybe not to name that we're adopting Agile and tell them, okay, we're going to do stand-up meetings. Maybe let's say if you have a team, they don't know about Agile and this is part of the Agile. So kind of hiding this fact that we're adopting Agile and focusing on the value of why we're doing these stand-up meetings. Is it better than...
Let me answer this question.
We have this program that or the consultant recommended Agile and we're adopting it, and part of it is doing these stand-up meetings.
Let me tell you something. You can hide the practices or maybe do not say that I'm doing Scrum, but you cannot hide the fact that we are trying to be more collaborative with the customer. We are trying to be more producing working software instead of producing more documentation. These are the core values that you are grounding people with. So you cannot hide them. I have no idea how are you going to do that.
Actually, we begin with the mindset part. We begin, most of the cases, we begin with trying to shift the mindset of the customers, the managers and the team to think differently. We introduce the values first and the principles first. We don't talk about practices in the beginning because this is not the important part. They should know that we have a lot of options based on the practices part, okay? But they should have the mindset part in order to decide which practices might be useful for their context and their needs, okay? Because every single organization has unique needs. So we usually begin with the important part, which is shifting their mindset. We need to know that they think in a different way now, okay? And then at this level, when you've established the mindset, it's a very easy step to introduce the practices part. It becomes easy to introduce whatever practices which aligns with their new mindset or their new way of thinking.
Okay, the next failure case is that pilot once rather than experiment and learn. You know, there is usually a practice in Agile adoption which says that, okay guys, let's pilot on one project and see whether it succeeds or fails. If it fails, then we'll not do it. If it succeeds, then we'll roll out all the organization. We transfer all this to all the organization. What we are saying is that you should not pilot because this is a great risk. Usually, Agile teams take some time to succeed. So we'd better create a safe environment for experimenting and learning. This is what we call a sandbox. So we first try with a project, which is a real-life project, and create this safe environment and let people try. Try maybe one or more methodologies, try for 2 or 3 iterations. One iteration may fail, produce 0 velocity. Things like that happens until the team gets the idea of iterating, the idea of applying the practices, and start making good progress with the Agile adoption.
Another issue related to this case is starting with a big bang adoption of Agile. Like starting with every single practice and every single method in Agile. Like trying to do everything all at once. This usually fails actually. Because Agile methods, they themselves embrace the iterative nature of developing software. You should go in iterations and develop a little bit of everything at a time. The same goes with adopting Agile actually. You can't just plan from day one, we will roll out Agile in 10 teams in our organization and we will practice every single practice in every single method in Agile. No, it usually doesn't work this way. Okay? You should start small and then go in incremental parts.
When you say start small, you mean in one team?
Maybe one team and not just one team.
One project?
One project and one shoe level process. So for example, you start with Scrum, okay? And then you should have your time practicing Scrum and learning from the practices which are useful to your context, and start to inject different practices through time. Maybe you start to learn that Scrum itself is not enough. We need to inject some practices from XP. For example, Scrum doesn't prescribe any technical practices. So most Scrum teams, after a while, they find themselves needing to add or inject other practices from other methods, such as XP, for example. So usually they don't just decide on this on day one.
In the meanwhile,
time.
you
Yes.
may decide to remove parts of the method at
Exactly.
the shoe level. When moving to the ha or re level, you may remove parts of the method. It would be this case, and injecting other practices from other methods. Okay, it's yours.
Okay. The other failure case is about the wrong persons playing the wrong roles. Have you witnessed, any of you witnessed this case? Yeah. Good. We have witnessed a lot of these cases actually. We have seen wrong persons playing the Scrum Master role, wrong persons playing the product owner role. We've seen in companies where managers, they call themselves Scrum Masters, okay? And this failed miserably actually. We have seen in other cases, project managers just playing Scrum Masters. And this itself it's not a problem. The problem is that a lot of project managers, they have the traditional mentality. They are used to micromanaging their teams and their resources, and they are not yet, they do not have or they do not embrace the agile mindset. But a lot of companies have heard that it's a tradition that most project managers in agile, they become useless. So probably they play the Scrum Master, or this is the nearest role which is like similar to their traditional or to their daily tasks, which is, again, this is not a rule. Not all project managers are good Scrum Masters, and not all project managers are bad Scrum Masters as well. Okay, we have seen also the wrong people playing the product owner role. We've seen like analysts not being empowered by the organization, or analysts not being empowered by the customer. We have seen teams with no product owners working just with the customers. Sometimes it was very useful, sometimes it was very successful. Other times it was very chaotic, especially when the customer had access to all the team members. So he would be asking one developer a request, and then in the other day he would be asking another developer, and it would turn to chaos. While the team is just thinking that they are responding to change and they are doing what the customer wants, but what actually happens is that it's becoming a chaotic environment where the customer is like abusing the nature of agile, and like asking every single team member something different on daily basis. Okay?
Pardon us for moving fast, because we have to finish after maybe 7 minutes from now.
No, we have
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Maximum of 10
okay.
minutes. Okay. Go ahead.
Focusing on the details and losing the big picture. We've seen a lot of practitioners, they think that agile is about jumping to write code right away, and no planning, no documentation, no planning, no long-term planning, and they began to lose the big picture. And this is a famous failure pattern, because the big picture is still important. Yes, you work in iterations, and yes, you work on small pieces of functionality at a time, but you shouldn't lose the big picture. You shouldn't lose monitoring your performance and your productivity and your progress towards the big picture, towards the release or the project. You should have a vision, and you should always check whether you are aligning with this vision or not. It's not just about the details and not just about the iterations and the user stories and the small pieces of functionality. you should always look at the bigger picture as well and see how you are aligning with this big picture.
One great example, one very good example for this is teams writing code from the first day and not paying attention to the architecture or the bigger design decisions. After not more than few weeks, they start introducing a lot of technical debt in the project, and after no more than few months, this project is cancelled. So actually, it's more than one project actually. But to the extent that this is becoming a failure pattern, a very famous failure pattern in Agile, that people are very overwhelmed with details and forget about the big picture.
In this case, we take in Scrum meeting or the weekly meeting in such cases?
Again, the Scrum and daily meetings are meetings which is concerned about the details as well. You know, it's for managing the details of the everyday life of the Scrum team. But I'm talking more about a practice like release planning, like the overall high-level architecture, while maintaining an evolutionary architecture, which is another practice from XP. So there are practices that handles creating the big picture in a very lean way. You know, it's embracing both together, still thinking in the big picture, but in the meanwhile, think of it in a lean way, a very lean way, not dig into the details and prescribing everything from day one.
Okay.
We have to move forward. Go ahead.
أنا أخش هذا.
طيب, not creating cross-functional teams. This is one of the biggest mistakes that you are experiencing while adopting Agile, because it has been shown that the most successful companies over the history, one thing which is common between all of them is cross-functional teams. Whether you are working in software development, in marketing, in manufacturing, in whatever. There is a book called Chasing the Rabbit by Steven Spear. He has done the whole research about this topic and have listed a lot of companies doing this and pinpointed that one of the greatest ideas which is in common between all successful companies is cross-functional teams.
Do you all know what cross-functional is, guys? Right? Yeah, cross-functional teams are the teams which have all the necessary roles which are needed in order to get the job done. So, for example, you can't say that a development team without a tester is a cross-functional team. Okay? A cross-functional team usually have all the necessary roles and functions necessary and the skills necessary to get the job done, to deliver working software. Okay? So, successful Agile teams must be cross-functional.
The direct example of this is having the testing team in another department, in which the team, after doing the job, transfers whatever code they have to this other department to start another way of doing the testing on this piece of job. So sometimes,
yeah.
Sometimes,
exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The last failure case here, it talks about relying heavily on tools rather than actual collaboration and communication. We have seen hundreds of people telling us, okay, we are Agile. We started to use Jira. We started to use Microsoft Team Foundation Server. And it's like Agile has magically been implemented to the team once they have started using a piece of tool. And this doesn't make any sense. Agile is not a specific tool. We have seen a lot of very successful teams just working with sticky notes and papers and whiteboards. Okay, so the tool is not everything. Yeah, sometimes you need the tool, but it's not about the tool. It's about the communication and the collaboration. It's about how you collaborate. Sometimes the tools can help you collaborate in a better way, especially if your team is distributed, for example, and if they are distributed in different locations in different countries, then you would rely more on tools. However, tools themselves are not the objective. Tools are just tools to help you collaborate and communicate better. So it's all about communicating and collaborating in a better way. Okay?
Now, let's talk a bit about failure in practice adoption. All the past failure cases was related more or less to the mindset, failure to embrace the mindset of Agile. Now we'll give you some practical experience about practices that would fail, and this is a technique actually to experiment with the practices. Are they really failing, or there is something missing? Okay, Agile practices work better with each other. We have to know that. Some practices are designed to work with each other, not in isolation. This is one very famous example. People move from waterfall life cycle to iterative life cycle, and they start doing iterations while not doing small requirements. So doing iterations with big requirements means that 5 minutes, yeah. Means that you'll not be able to deliver anything at the end of the iteration, which means that you will deliver the rest of the requirement in maybe 2 or 3 other iterations, creating a waterfallish, Agile implementation. So this is a great example of implementing iterations, and this is very necessary to succeed with iterations.
Remember, there is a principle called working software is the primary measure of progress. So after each iteration, the output should be working software. You will not have working software unless you have small pieces of functionality, small vertical slices of functionality. If your requirements are that big, there would not be working software after each iteration. Okay?
This is a general technique. We'll leave you with this technique to test whatever practice which is failing at your case. Start with this failing practice and think twice. Is this practice not valuable for me, which may be the case? Or I should look around and see what other twins that would make this practice succeed. Do you get the idea?
Okay, we mean that this practice, maybe it failed by itself. However, maybe if we couple it with other practices, it will work, yes.
And this was one example, and let us think about this example. A team implementing simple design, and they are failing. What do you think other practice would work well with simple design? For time constraints, I'll let you know.
No.
It's employing a coding standards. You can't start with very simple thin design unless the team has clear guidelines on how we develop web applications, for example. So if you have this coding standards, you can work with simple design. Guess what? If you have continuous refactoring, this would make things very, very successful. So the problem may not be in the simple design itself. It may be that you are not employing the right blend of practices together. Okay. This is another example, stand-up meetings. This is very famous. Stand-up meetings usually fail, and it becomes a failure for the whole Agile practice. And I could let you know many stories about that. But what about this? Why they are failing?
Too long.
Maybe, but why they are too long? Because we do not have small daily tasks. If you are reporting status, while your task takes 3 or 4 days, your single task takes 3 to 4 days to complete. Why are you standing up and telling the people your status? The status is that I'm still working, still in progress. So it's not valuable. This practice becomes not valuable, while this practice plus this practice is very valuable. Small tasks, the task takes no more than 2 to 3 hours, then you have something to say.
One more issue why stand-up is doesn't work sometimes because if the project has too many risk conditions, and I know it's take it out, but having stand-up meeting will end up taking half an hour because people start discussing problem solving and issues.
Yes, not just highlighting the issues. Yeah.
Okay, we can go on many exercises like that, like continuous integration and the relation with collective code ownership and automated tests, release planning and the relation with story mapping, things like that, but we have to wrap up and finish because of the keynote. So please, the last advice that we all want you to know while thinking about practices is that it's not about it's all about value. If the team grasps the value and see the benefit, practices will not fail. This is the key takeaway that you have get out from here with
Okay.
while thinking about failing practices.
Can find
Thank
Okay,
you
thank you
very
guys.
much. I'm sorry for this.
Thank you.